That was in 2011 in August. I went first with my grandmother, with my Lola, to Canada, and then we were in LA. And then we went to Massachusetts. So we kind of went around for like a month or so before actually coming to Manila. I can't really remember it. I just remember having my two maletas, just very excited. My parents always preferred the States and they wouldn't allow me till after high school. So it was just something that felt very right. What I'm really imagining now is sitting on the plane and writing out what I was feeling then. It feels like a whole nother lifetime ago. At that time I was only 18. And I wasn't doing the normal thing that my batchmates in high school were doing, which was staying within the state, attending a university or maybe out of state university. And, I had a boyfriend at the time, my high school boyfriend. I just kind of knew, like, I think he knew also it wasn't gonna, like, last. But at the time, we didn't have LTE. We were using Skype back then. But I just remember thinking how like different my life would change, especially since there my parents raised my brothers and I in that in the very regular American way, wherein when you turn 16 you get your first job, you pay for your own car, you pay for your own college tuition, and then moving to live with my paternal grandparents, who I always looked up to growing up. Very different upbringing. They gave me a curfew, and I had never had a curfew in the States. It was just kind of an understanding between my parents and I, like, okay, you should be home, or like they'll suggest you should be home around this time. And that was me just out of respect, like, okay, I'll be home this time. But if there are the times where I'd come home later, they wouldn't get upset. With my grandparents, it's like, you need to be home by midnight. And like, they're very particular with who I would hang out with at the time. It was a lot of excitement, that I did want to try out modeling and the industry. But when I finally made the move, it wasn't my first priority, because of school and the new friends I had. And I kind of just pushed it to the side and didn't focus on it. I was like, oh, if it comes along, it comes along. My goals had changed. And then my original goals, like, I shifted back to that, which was modeling and then entering the industry. I think I'm on my fourth journal now. And I started writing when I was about 14. And when I read back to like the way I would write when I was 14 years old, I'm just amazed. Like, the things I would say, like, even if I have go through heartbreaks, for example, I'll go back and I'll read like from the beginning to the most recent entry, if it gets to that point. And when I'm rereading it, I'm just like, this girl was so wise. Like, why am I like all broken about this guy when at 14 or like 16 I was giving myself this advice. It's something I recommend to most girls, to most young women, is to keep a journal, because your younger self can show you just, or can remind you just how strong you really are. I'm a first degree black belt in Taekwondo. And I got my first degree in 2011, and I shifted to Muay Thai after. So I don't do competitive Muay Thai. It's just more for the love of martial arts and just learning. There's so much that comes with it. I started when I was 8. So it's all muscle memory. Like, for me, it's almost second nature to do my kicks. And I'm not violent. I don't know, it's very calming. It's like the opposite effect with me, especially when we do sparring with the pads. Um, if you're angry, it's almost like meditation. I competed in Binibining Pilipinas 2017. Then I won Binibining Pilipinas Intercontinental, which is not a major crown. I really loved the competition. It was in Egypt. The Miss Intercontinental organization, they're great. They're so organized. I competed in 2018 for Miss World Philippines. And then I won the Miss World Philippines crown. Then I competed in Miss World in China, which wasn't the best experience. I'd say I'm religious to an extent, but I'm still also learning a lot about my spirituality, and I don't talk about this a lot. I don't think anyone stays religious consistently for days straight. I think it's like a roller coaster where you're in and out of it. And with pageantry, I definitely have felt my closest to God during that time. It tested me a lot, and I think till today, like I'm still questioning Him, like why did I go through this? I don't know how to put it. Everyone's like, "Oh, sayang, she could have been Miss Universe Philippines whatever year," or "Sayang na I didn't, I wasn't placed in Miss World," and they question these things. I question them, and I can't say that that pageants aren't, there isn't some sort of rig that happens within. I think nationally there's none. The people who were meant to win the crowns they won were really meant to win those crowns. um, but when it comes down to the international pageant, there's so many girls. Yeah, it was about like 130, and you can see that there are different variables that come into play, like the country you come from, how your national director is courting the owner of the organization. It kind of is like when you tell a kid Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy isn't real. I mean, you think pageants, you think like queens, princesses, and then when you get to these international pageants, and this happened particularly with Miss World, and you see that it's not what you thought it was. Katriana Gray also, her experience with Miss World wasn't what should have been. And then she won Miss Universe, right? Couple years later. But I think that's my biggest struggle is trying to understand why it happened. Of course, there's always the growth, but it's just like, I competed, I gave my all. There's things behind that should have happened or needed to happen to help me reach the goal. You can't point fingers or blame anyone because you also don't want to do that. You don't want to. I wouldn't have wanted my national director to have been like, I'll pay you this, I'll pay you that. It's just as an example. And I'm not saying that happened. It's just that I do wonder, did it happen? And then of course the girls, some of us are in touch, and after the fact, they would talk. I don't want to say that it came from jealousy, um, because knowing some of these, maybe some of the girls it did, but other girls, I don't think it did. I think with other girls, from the beginning, you just see that, okay, well, this country, there's something about her that they're really into from the beginning already, and you kind of just question it. So those are all the things that happen, and at the end of it, I'm just like, why did I go down this path only to go back around? Because before pageantry, I was with Viva Artist Agency, and they were so good to me. They put me through workshop. A lot of what I know came from what they taught me. They were kind of bringing me towards the path of showbiz, which I didn't want to go down at that time, hence why I shifted to pageantry. And then now it's kind of like I made a circle and I'm going back to that direction. So I'm still, when I sit there by myself and I just think about it, I'm like, why? Why did I go through this part? Like, and then both times I competed internationally, Miss Mexico won both times. And I'm not saying neither of them didn't deserve, because they're beautiful inside and out. It's just like, when you watch it and you see how one person answers, the other person doesn't. But with Miss Intercontinental, that's the case. Miss Mexico wasn't able to answer, and I became her first runner up. But I know what they're looking for, and I know that what I wanted isn't what they're looking for, which is why when we spoke about it afterwards, I have like the highest respect for them, because they were so supportive of me competing in Miss World. they're always supportive. I still talk to the owner of the pageant from time to time. His name is Detlef, and he's like, if you need anything, if you're in Europe, just let me know. So it's kind of just the way the world works. Like, in any sort of relationship, like, this is what I'm looking for, this is what this person's looking for, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, then you keep a good relationship, but you don't go down that same path. With Miss World, I was under so much, like, of the impression that this is like the pageant of pageants. Like, they were all about the advocacies and being an activist, and it came down to it, and it almost seemed like they just wanted the girls to build like a pool in some random village in Southeast Asia. And I was like, if I had known that, I would have tried to build a hospital in Siargao, because there's no hospital here. And I don't know if you watched my Beauty with a Purpose project, but that I put my whole heart into. It was the whole purpose and intention of it. It's with for peace education, and it could have been applied globally, and that was the direction and vision I had. But I guess once I entered Miss World, I was just like, this isn't what they want. I look up to, like, Pio Wirchbach, for example. She's no longer Miss Universe, but she's still heavy in her advocacy. It's hard. I'm like, because I do compare myself to them. Like, okay, she's like this, so I should keep doing this. And then I'm like, but I didn't even win. I'm like, why am I putting so much pressure? Because I didn't even win. And it's hard not to do that. Then there's all this whole behind the scenes pageant world with all of the trainers, the supporters, the Filipino pageant fans, their comments, and then when they're just like, sayang si Katarina, da 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 da, she deserved more. You can't also help but think, like, yeah, I did deserve more. Like, yeah, like, I should have done this. It's like, it's not for me until today. I'm trying to figure out why. So I was doing a teleseria before COVID happened, and they had me cry all the time. And what I would think about when I would cry is that I would think about the moments where my Philippines wasn't called out while I was on stage. And those are always the tear jerkers for me, because I think there's so much emotion that I haven't closed off from my pageant world. My heart hasn't fully, like, closed off from it. The hardest challenge for me is still trying to understand where I belong after having competed and not having won an international pageant. I graduated with a philosophy degree, and I'm very thankful for that, because it helps me accept things like that more. It's almost like, oh, okay, well, I didn't win. Let's kind of annotate all my notes and why I didn't win, and then let's move past it.